Okay, so it's the news of the week, or as I would say, the news in the last 3 days, because ever since I started doing this, I've been pretty much doing it more than once every single week. I've been doing it at least 2 times every single week, and usually in a 3 day interval. But obviously, this will not continue once we get into the season because in the off season there tends to be more important news than it is when the season goes along. And also, I can't really do it twice when I also have to do the previews and review once the season starts. And also, we are getting to a time in the off season where we are preparing for the super draft. Now, I know a lot of people probably thinking, why have I not made a video about the super draft? Well, I'll pretty much explain once we get to this news right here about the union in this news of the week of why I don't cover the super draft and also the draft combine that just happened a couple of days ago. But first of all, let's talk about some of the biggest news that happened in these last couple of days. The first news is that Tata Martino is now officially named as the Mexico head coach. So, again, just like the last episode with Caleb Porter's, this was pretty much confirmed a long time ago, but the organization, or in this case the national team of Mexico, still haven't really released the statement that they officially announced them, but now they did. They have officially announced that he is the head coach, and he's already made some interesting kind of plans that he wants to put for this team. He's already saying that he is planning to put Carlos Vela and the Dos Santos brother as part of his plan when he's taking over with Eltree. And Carlos Vela, that obviously makes sense because Carlos Vela is kind of a regular for Eltree, and that he's a very talented kind of winger, one of the best player in MLS. But I'm not sure about the Dos Santos brothers, because the Dos Santos brothers, when I talked to a couple of Mexican fans back in that Mexico versus Wales game that I went to, some of them were not really kind of happy the fact that the Dos Santos brother was still there. I mean, I know the Dos Santos brother is kind of very popular for a lot of Mexican fans, but some of them say that they don't really kind of contribute for the Mexican national team. Now, I'm not a Mexican fan, and I don't know much about that team, and I'm pretty sure Mexican fans in the comment section below is going to say, what are you even on about? But I'll let you guys know, do you think it's a good idea to put the Dos Santos brother back in? Like, I hear people say maybe Jonathan Dos Santos might contribute with this team, but definitely not Gio. Gio, he is kind of in a very downhill kind of slope for these last couple of years, especially this year with the Galaxy, where he basically went AWOL with the Galaxy this year. And even when he got called up before the World Cup, he did not fare well either. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting of him being in the national team when he's not even doing anything for his club. But moving on, Minnesota are now front runners to potentially get Ozzy Alonso. So, last episode of the news of the week, I talked about how Cincinnati were the one that was going to get Ozzy Alonso. But now it looked like Minnesota are potentially going to hijack this deal and get Ozzy Alonso. And remember, this Ozzy Alonso situation is kind of a little bit complicated, because as much as these two teams are trying to snatch him up, you got to remember that Seattle are still in a very uncertain stage of whether or not are they going to let go of Ozzy Alonso. I mean, certainly for this front office and certainly for Golf Lagerwey, this is a massive decision, because if you let go of Ozzy Alonso, that means that you are committed to try to go through this transitional stage and hope that the midfielder that you have right now would be enough to trying to bridge the gap and trying to pretty much, hopefully, when Ozzy Alonso passed the torch to those players that replace him, that it will go as smooth as possible. And Alonso, he is still one of the best midfielder in the league, even though he is getting past his prime. But it's a big decision that the Sounders need to make. I mean, without him, the Sounders at times have looked really kind of bad in that midfield. So not only now we're discussing who exactly is going to win the Aussie Alonso sweepstake, but it's also, is he even going to be leaving the Sounders? I mean, from what I'm seeing with teams trying to get him, it looked like the Sounders are letting him go, but you never know. Maybe Garth Lagerwey are trying to hold on to him. And this is also what I talked about a couple of weeks ago about how the Sounders are going through a stage where they're getting rid of the core that they had, that they built when they came into the league, that is part of the old Sounders, and now they're bringing in some new players into that team that is part of the new Sounders, and they're trying to pretty much go through this transitional stage where they can get rid of these guys that is part of the old Sounders and go forward with the new Sounders team, and it will just be as smooth, and the team will not really have any drawback, which is incredibly hard to do. But still, the Sounders are still doing it, and they're still doing very well in the league, and still have not had a single season that they're in MLS where they missed the playoffs. But moving on, so Montreal decided to sell Alejandro Silva to Club Olympia for a record fee of $3 million, and I think this is a very smart move for Montreal, and certainly they got a lot for him because Silva, he wasn't really contribute with this team in terms of the striker position. I mean, Montreal, they're still having this issue of trying to get an actual striker, and I'm kind of surprised they still haven't addressed that issue. I mean, Remy Gart's got to figure it out in terms of that striker situation where, they got maybe one more year left before they have to figure it out, because Piatti is kind of like their goal scorer, and kind of like they're pretending he's the striker even though he's not. He's a number 10. But they do get a lot of money out of this deal where they can use this money to spend on a striker. I mean, I would be shocked if Montreal does not use this money to spend a striker, because they need one. They seriously need one. And like I said about Alejandro Silva, he wasn't really contributing a lot for this team, and I think it's good that they got rid of him now. Not only got rid of his contract, but now you're going to get some profit out of this. So Dallas, they decided to sign Honduran international Brian Acosta to a DP contract. So this news was reported way back in November, or actually not November, but probably in December, and way back, I think about 10 or 20 episode ago in the news of the week, I talk about how Dallas was linked with this guy. Well, they have now officially signed him, and they actually signed him to a DP contract. I mean, he certainly is a very promising player for the Honduran national team, but for a DP contract like that, yeah, that's kind of interesting. And what's also interesting about Dallas is that they don't have any DP slot left. I mean, they have technically now 4 DPs, which obviously you cannot have 4 DPs in the season, and that they're gonna have to eventually buy down one of their DP. And there's certainly some DP that they have in this team that definitely is not DP level caliber. Guys like Coman, for example, I think he probably will be brought down. Maybe Mosquera might be another guy that might be brought down. And I forgot who was another guy for Dallas that is also in that DP slot that didn't really play a lot last season. So they could have easily brought down some of their DPs that they have and maybe put Brian Acosta as one of their DP. But the bottom line is they need to buy down one of their DP and need to maybe even get rid of one of their DP if they want to make this work, because you cannot have 4 DPs in the league. Columbus, they report to sign Robinho Barbosa, and unfortunately it's not the other Robinho who plays for Man City, and if it was the other Robinho, then that would definitely be a good signing. But apparently they signed this young Brazilian winger, and it's definitely a good signing for them. I mean, at this point, if you're going to go to South America and trying to go there to shop young kind of talented player, which Robinho Barbosa I heard is one of those guys, then you're definitely is doing something right, because that's what the league is now all about. many teams are just going down to South America to shop and look for these young, talented South American players to be constructed in their squad. Um, Joe Inger Burgett is reported to be on his way out of NYCFC, and he is not the only guy that could be on his way out of NYCFC. So Walker Zimmerman could also be on his way out of NYCFC, or not NYCFC, LAFC that is. But the difference between Joe Inger Burgett and Walker Zimmerman is that Burgett, he hasn't said anything about him wanting to stay at NYCFC, but Walker Zimmerman has. Walker Zimmerman want to stay at LAFC, even though there's been a lot of rumor that he is going to be leaving LAFC to go to Europe or even go to Mexico and join a Liga MX side. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how both of these players, whether or not if they're going to be with their team into the next season. Obviously, I think Burgett probably is not going to be part of NYCFC because he didn't contribute a lot for this team, and it cost so much for NYCFC to sign him. Like, he was on a $800,000 contract, which is just a lot of money. And with NYCFC getting rid of Burgett, that will really free up that space in the salary cap, and potentially they will find a guy that can replace David Villa in terms of that striker position. But for Walker Zimmerman, I don't know. We'll see if LAFC does decide to re-sign him now that he is out of contract. And then the Union, they have decided to not participate in the Super Draft this year. And the reason why they're not participating in this year is because they gave up all 5 of their draft picks to FC Cincinnati for $200,000 general allocation money. And this is where I'm going to explain the reason why I don't cover the Super Draft and don't really pay a lot of attention to the Combine, is because usually most of these guys in the Super Draft doesn't usually doesn't usually have a good career in MLS. So unlike how in the other sports where they have draft system like the NBA draft or the NFL draft, where when you get drafted you could potentially have a good career in the league, yeah, that's not MLS. Okay, most of these guys that come out of the Super Draft are from college, and most of these guys usually are shipped out immediately to a USL team, and they just have to find a way to potentially get into an MLS squad that USL team is owned by, which is incredibly hard to do. So yeah, that is why I rarely pay attention to the Super Draft, because most of these players, although they are good, talented player, most of them are probably not going to make it into the big stage. And I guess the Union see that as a way that, there's no point us going to the Super Draft to try to draft guys that we probably won't need, and why not just trust the homegrown kind of system that we have and trying to get some guys out of our academy to potentially move forward with our team, which is what the Union has done last season. I mean, most of the guys that they had last season, and most of the talented guys that they have last season was from the academy and from their USL team. So yeah, we'll see if, I get some people say that this is a stupid move by the Union to just give up all 5, just not even participating in, and hopefully they'll trust the homegrown as a way to do it. But I have no problem with that. I know for the Quakes, when I look at some of the draft pick that they have made in the previous year, yeah, most of those guys did not even make it to the Quakes team. I think the Super Draft a couple of years ago, the Super Draft would have been more important, because those were the players that teams really rely on and basically develop them into good players to be in the league. But since now the league has been involved where teams are spending more money on foreign player and more players from South America, they don't really need to look into the Super Draft and need to go there to look for a young kind of talented player when they could have got those same kind of player in South America that is even better than what are those players in college. So that is the reason why the super draft has really become more irrelevant as more teams are spending, and the target allocation money and the general allocation money is continues to go up. And then finally, Mark Geiger is retired from refereeing to take a senior match official job at the Pro, which is the professional referee organization, which is the organization that the MLS use for their refs. And I would say he takes a director senior match official job. So basically what this job is, that he is pretty much in charge of coaching some of the new refs that is going to be coming into MLS, and he will also be looking at ways to potentially make refereeing much better in this league, and also make VAR much better than it is. And I guess if you are a guy that hates Mike Geiger, which I know a lot of fans hated him, he's one of the most hated referee from last season. The good news is he's not going to be refereeing match anymore. But the bad news is he is going to be the guy is going to continue to try to bring the continuity of refereeing to make it a little bit better, and also VAR too. And knowing the fact that he didn't do a good job when he was refereeing last season, that might be a little bit kind of sketchy to try to trust that guy as the person that is in charge of the whole system. But to be fair, I will say about Geiger, he is one of the most experienced MLS ref, and as much as I know there's been a lot of hatred toward him, he's been in the league for a very long time, and he used to be one of the best referee in the league. And I think maybe the reason why he's been making more mistakes than he has in previous year is that he's getting older. Okay, as you get older, you are going to make more mistake, and looks like Mark Geiger kind of knew that it is probably time for him to hang up his boots and try not to hurt all those criticism that the fans always put on him. And now he just decided to hang up his boot, but he still are going to be part of Pro and gonna be promoted into a pretty important position. But yeah, there you go. There is the news of the week. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of these news? And as usual, if I miss any important news, let me know in the comments below and I'll react to that. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash that subscribe button, and yeah, I will see you guys next time.